Hey friends, Samuel Robinson here, and welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about how you can do your very own Bible study. Now, right off the bat, I just want to say that the term Bible study is kind of a misnomer, because the word study really implies more of a pursuit of academic knowledge that can be used, say, to help pass on a test or exam. But what we really want to do when doing our Bible study is to learn, and there's a big difference between learning and studying. For most people, when they're studying something such as a university science course, the goal is usually to pass the exam. At the time, you're not really interested in retaining the knowledge and understanding how to use it in different contexts as you are in getting a high or passing grade on the exam. But when you're learning something, usually your mindset's entirely different. You're not doing it because it's something that you have to do, but you're learning because it's something that you want to do, and you actually find it kind of fun. And that's really what Bible study should be. It should be something that we really want to do, that we deeply enjoy, because we want to learn from it, rather than just gain a basic knowledge of the scriptures. So today I'm going to walk you through my process that I use for studying the Bible in the hopes that you can find some of these things helpful and maybe apply some of the tips to your own Bible study going forward. Now, of course, I don't claim to be any sort of authority on the matter. There are certainly others out there who have had far more years of experience in this sort of thing, and I would definitely rather you turn to them for help and guidance before listening to me. But some of those classes out there can be fairly lengthy, and so in the case that you're just looking for a quick and fast idea of how to do your own Bible study right now, then hopefully this video will be helpful for you. So without further ado, here's my 4-step process for learning just about anything from the Bible. Now, working on a Bible study really begins before you actually sit down at your desk and write, because before you can sit down and study something, well, you need to know what you want to study. So one of the things I've been doing recently that I found really helpful in giving me ideas and keeping my Bible study going is to keep a running list of the things that I want to look at. So whenever you're doing the Bible readings or you're listening to a class, whatever it might be, as you read through and you come across different themes and stories and ideas, maybe it's something that you don't really understand and you'd like to learn more about it, then write it down. And this can be on a piece of paper, it can be in a dedicated notebook, it can be on a computer program like I've done. Whatever it is, as long as it's in a place where you won't lose it and where you won't forget about it. So whenever you sit down to start a new study, you can look at the list of all the things you've chosen beforehand and you can go from there. And this is something I've only started recently, but I found it to be immensely helpful in 2 main ways. And the first is what we've already talked about, that when you're not sure what to look at, then you can just pull out this list and work from there. But second of all, and maybe more importantly, is that having this list actually keeps the ideas in the back of your mind. So when you're going about your day, when you're listening to a class or going through the readings, or even looking through your ecclesial library, you can come across books or verses or topics or themes, all these different ideas that relate to the topic you know you want to look at in the future. All of these things will combine to create kind of a bunch of references that you can turn to later when you go to study the topic in more detail. And so the first step of the process is to prepare by keeping a running list of things you know you want to look at. Once you've chosen a topic and begun the study comes the second part of the process, and that is to discover. Now this is really important. It sets the backbone for the rest of your study, because if you don't know what the story's about, then there's no point in digging into the deeper details because you won't have any idea of the context surrounding them. So this is the part of the process where you really learn the story. You learn about the characters and the parts that each one plays. You learn about the beginning and the end of the story and where all the events take place. And so at this point, all you want to do is learn what the topic is about, and so you just have to start reading. So you read through it once, try to read through the whole thing in one go, if you can. If it's maybe 20 chapters, then maybe split it up into 2 sessions. But read through the whole story once, then try to read it out loud, then go through other versions to see how they translate the story. Then you can even listen to people reading the story out for you. All of these things to just get the story into your head so that you know deeply what you're looking at throughout the rest of your study. Now, I know at this point it can be really tempting because you see something that looks interesting, you see a theme, and so you start looking into it before you've finished reading the rest. And it can be good because you can find things really interesting to have for later, but something I prefer to do is to keep a notebook by my side, and whenever I come across a theme that might seem promising, or a repeated phrase, or maybe a cross-reference that I want to look up, I'll write that down in my notebook so that I have it there for later and I won't forget it, but that I can still read through the whole story in one go without kind of breaking the flow of what's going on. So once you've finished reading through the story and you think you have the whole thing firmly in your mind, then that's when you can start doing some initial digging into some of those deeper contexts. So at this point is usually when I'll start to look at some simple word meanings, maybe the meanings of people's names. I'll highlight the key themes of the section in my Bible and look up location meanings, all these sort of things, and create a chapter breakdown, all to kind of have the main details there in front of me. And finally, as part of the discover part of the process, and maybe my favorite part of the entire process, is to visualize the story. And this usually consists of drawing a map. Now, the reason I like a map so much is because it helps me to see the whole story from a bird's eye view. It's no longer simply words on a page, but a visualization of all the things that happened. And so here's an example of a map I did. I'm not sure if it's in focus or not, but basically this was when I was doing a study of the wilderness wanderings. And so I have all the locations that the children of Israel ended up at, a brief summary of what happened there, some name meanings, and this I found really helpful while going throughout the rest of my study, because then I had this resource that I can turn back to constantly, and I can see and visualize how everything happened. And so drawing a map for me and visualizing the story really helps to contribute to that sense of learning, because you trick your brain into saying, hey, this isn't hard work, this is actually kind of fun. And not only that, but it's also a really helpful resource to use as you're going through the rest of your study, and you can reference it and utilize it a lot throughout. So for me anyway, to really visualize the story helps to contribute to that sense of learning. So now you've learned lots about the topic at hand, you've done lots and lots and lots of reading, and maybe you've started to try and visualize the story or topic at hand. And so now it's time for the third part of the process, and that's to dig deeper. And so this is usually the point when I'll turn to outside resources. So I'll try to find relevant articles in the Christadelphian magazine. I'll scour my bookshelf as well as my dad's bookshelf for any books that might contribute to the topic. I'll look for online classes, and if I'm really struggling to find content that relates to the topic at hand, then I'll turn to a commentator such as Matthew Henry to get some of their ideas and perspectives on the topic. So this part of the process is a real help for me because it provides a head start. Because as I listen to other people's ideas and perspectives, I start to get a better grasp on the story as a whole, and also get an idea of some of the main lessons that are going to come out of it. So I'll usually spend a few, maybe 2 or 3 sessions hearing what other people have to say on the topic before I start to dig deeper myself. And once I've heard what other people have to say, then I'll go more verse by verse or section by section myself and look into some of the key words. I'll look up cross-references in my margin as well as the TSK, and I'll start to establish other connections with other places in Scripture. It's what's called comparing Scripture with Scripture. To get an idea of what this says, you compare what the same idea has to say in another part of the Bible. And it's usually when I start doing this that the key lessons really start to take shape, and I can start to come up with a set of study notes from which to go from in the future. So obviously, because you're digging so deep in this part of the process, this part is going to take up the majority of your time, but it's also where you're going to find the most interesting and compelling concepts and lessons and ideas. So once you've done this part and you've dug deeper into the study, then there's only one more step to the process, and that's to create and to apply. Of course, we need to remember that doing Bible study is of very little value if we're not actually taking the things we've learned and trying to apply them every day. And this is one of the most difficult things for me. I'll often finish a session of Bible study and then go off doing something completely different and just completely forget about everything that I've just learned. And so one of the things I've been trying to do more recently is to spend 3 or 5 minutes at the end of each study session trying to answer the question, so what? So I'll write "so what" at the top of a blank piece of paper and try to list 2 or 3 key points or takeaways from that study that I've just done. And doing that kind of has tricked my brain into thinking, hey, these things are really important. I should try to remember them going forward. And so I found that's been really helpful in at least remembering the things short term throughout the rest of my day. But if you're anything like me, chances are your memory is utterly dreadful. And if you're one of those people that does remember everything they listen to and learn, then kudos to you. But I'm not one of those people, and so I need some sort of method to remember the things I've learned and studied from the Bible long term. And so that's where the final step of the process comes into play, and that's to create. This is where you take the whole process that you've just completed from start to finish and turn it into something tangible, something that you can look back on and think, I really did learn something from that. And I know this sounds wrong, but you want it to be something that you can be proud of, that you can look at and genuinely remember the things that you learned. And ideally, this should be something that's fun, that you enjoy, to help you remember and learn. So at the end of each study, I try to turn it into something tangible to help me to remember. So whether that's turning it into a Bible class that I'm going to present to the ecclesia with notes and slides, or whether it's creating a set of aesthetically pleasing notes that I can look back on to remember the key points of the study, or even if it's just writing a short article on the topic. All of these things are examples of creating something from your study. And there are hundreds of ways you can do this. You can make a timeline, you can make an infographic, or draw a picture. Anything that you can look back on in the future and remember the key points from your study so that you never forget them, anything like that will work. And I find this part of the process extremely satisfying because it allows me to be creative and also helps me to remember these things for the long term. Because it's only when you've actually remembered the things that you've looked at and tried to apply them in various circumstances of life that Bible study has accomplished its purpose. So that is my 4-step process to completing any Bible study. You want to start with preparing, and then discovering, and then investigating, and then you want to create and apply. And of course, this isn't a hard outline that I apply every single time that I sit down in front of my Bible, but it's the general idea that I take into each new topic, and I found that that seems to work pretty well. So if you take anything away from this video, just try to remember that Bible study isn't really study in the sense of something that's tedious or hard to do in the sense of studying for an exam, but it should be something that we truly want to do, that we find fun and enjoyable, to help in that process of learning the really important lessons that it has for us to see there each and every day. So any way you can make it fun, whether that's drawing out a map or creating a tangible piece that you can take away from the study, as long as it doesn't take away from the true message God is trying to get across in His Word, then if you do that and utilize it, I think you'll find that there are a lot of benefits that come. Also, if you're interested, I've created a little PDF document. You can find it in the description down there and download it with the 4-step process here and some bullet points that you can follow along if you're interested while doing your own study. And that's it for today's video. If you found it helpful, make sure to let me know by hitting the like button down below. And if you have any questions or comments, maybe you want to let me know about something that you find helpful in your own Bible study, please leave a comment on this video. That way other people might be able to learn from them as well. If you're interested in watching more, feel free to subscribe if that's something you're into. I plan to make more videos like this in the future, God willing. And also, I recently made a video on the benefits of morning Bible study, so you can click the link right up here to watch that if that's something you'd like to do. So thanks again for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. And until then, may God bless.